And we're live on the Nobody's Famous podcast. We have a very special guest with us today. The one, the only, Ramses III.
The second.
The second. Is it second in the game?
Well, the second's more famous, right? I don't know if you know this, but Ramses II has actually the most monuments of any pharaoh in Egypt.
I didn't know that. Only by a generation.
Only by a generation.
Mohammad Al Qadi, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
today.
you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. First question, Harvard or Oxford?
Oxford.
Okay.
Oxford's,
no hesitation there.
No, A, I'm biased. And B, we all know that Oxford started it all. So I don't know if you know this, but graduates from Oxford actually started Cambridge. And then graduates from Cambridge started Harvard. So we're kind of like the mothership.
Okay. Yeah. First time I see someone compare a university to an alien mothership.
It kind of feels that way because when you go to Oxford, it's about 800 years stuck in the past. The architecture, the people, just the way everyone's dressed in these Harry Potter-like costumes. So it does feel like a place out of this world.
Nice. So moving to the board game, which is an amazing achievement for you. The first strategy board game by an Emirati. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've played it, and I've lost.
I wonder who won.
It's like, I wonder who won. You know? Wink, wink. You know? Like, no surprise there. But my first question, before we're gonna get into that, but my first question is, you kind of mentioned it that it came from your passion for making this. Because I had a question: is where did it come from? But you mentioned that it came from video games. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up loving video games, like absolutely loving video games. So there are 3 types of games I would play. Counter-Strike, I was obsessed. FIFA and all the sports games. But my favorite were like the strategy games. The Total Wars and the Red Alerts, and anyone who's played video games will probably know what I'm talking about. And I'm literally obsessed till this very day. If you give me an Alienware, which my wife has done and regretted doing so, I might disappear for a couple of months, right?
In the man cave.
In the man cave.
In the dark, with orange juice.
Exactly.
Orange juice, cookies, biscuits.
Cookies are the
See
best.
you guys later.
I mean, cookies is the thing, right?
With the orange juice, you need the mix.
But honestly, and the reason why I'm so obsessed with strategy games is not because I'm obsessed with games. It's because I'm obsessed with reality. So if you've visited my house, and hopefully you will someday, you'll notice a library that spans the entire wall, and I have a couple more at my dad's house. It's just filled with history books and military strategy books. I love it since I was a kid, reading about history of every single region, of every single timeline, and wanting to know exactly the tactics that were used in battle or to rule a population or whatever it is, right? And as such, I've always been looking for a strategy game that can mimic that. And I found it on video games. It was Total War. I love that game. But on board games, I struggled. I struggled to find something that can be authentic. And the way I sell my game is it's authentic. It's something that really takes you back to the 3rd century BC. If you notice the artwork, the countries, the way they've laid out, the politics between the different players, but more importantly, even the rules. Every rule makes sense. There aren't any wizards that are going to pop up on the map and do some...
Only elephants from Carthage, that's it.
Exactly.
Considered,
But nothing, everything kind of makes sense, and everything is so strategic. Everything makes you feel like you are Julius Caesar or you are Hannibal the Great or whoever it is. And I'm very happy that the product kind of really mimics that authenticity.
I completely relate to that, and I mean... the guys know, and I'm very vocal about my also obsession with video games, and the most thing that I love to play also was strategy. But I never had this step into board gaming, because when you play video games, the game tells you, okay, this is a tutorial, you're done in like 20 minutes, and you play it. And I already started getting into board games like a couple of years ago, and I would sit down for an hour and read. Like, I didn't even play yet. I'm just reading now. And wait, then you have to read, then you have to explain to the players, and then every single player is like, can we play first? And then you know, like, no, but you can't play if you don't know this thing. So it's that chicken and egg cycle, and that was the difficulty. Do you think that this is have you broken down that wall where is your game accessible, or?
I think so. I think if you are expecting exploding kittens, which is I don't know.
2 minutes to learn.
It literally
130 dirhams.
It literally takes 2 minutes to learn, right? And it's just the silliest game ever. And I know some people enjoy it.
No, I mean
And
it's fun. It's like a gateway game, but I don't know if it's
I wouldn't even say it's a gateway. It's not even a gateway, right? It's something that anyone can pick up and play, and they probably wouldn't be interested in a more complex game. I believe something like Settlers of Catan, if you heard about it.
Yeah,
or
that's
even,
the gateway one.
Yeah, that's really
actually
a
what
gateway.
got me into these types of board games.
And I've heard that so much. And I think in game stores abroad, what they'll say is they'll put a game up there and they'll say ×1 or ×2 Settlers of Catan, just so that you know how complex it is compared to that baseline.
It's the benchmark.
It is the benchmark. And I really do believe this is a ×1 of Settlers of Catan. It's the same kind of complexity in terms of it's not too difficult to learn. There are a couple of rules that you have to kind of memorize at the very beginning, and it might seem a little daunting. The tutorial is about 10 minutes, hopefully, so it's not a couple of hours. But I think once you take 1 or 2 rounds, you get it and you enjoy it. And the reason I mention this is everyone who's played the game so far, or at least the first few weeks of the launch, were all non-gamers, right? Or non-hardcore board gamers. And they all loved it. I mean, these are people who've only played Monopoly. And I can see the look in their eyes when I first started explaining the rules, like, wait, this is a little bit too much.
I need to think.
But a couple of maybe 10 or 20 minutes later, they were rolling. I mean, and they were really enjoying it and telling me they wanted to play it again. And most of them purchased the game. So I think it has broke down a lot of barriers. And I think we learn from our mistakes. So, looking back, I think in a year's time and 2 years' time, I'll keep coming up with ways to even simplify it further and further.
What's the what was the process, very briefly, of how you brought it to life?
Man, it was just doing things. So, can I just say something? Honestly,
Closed.
No, honestly,
Just I don't did things.
I really got to say this because I have a best friend who has a foul mouth, and he would say, and I'm going to try to keep this as PG as possible, but he would say, I hate people who are rocket scientists. I need people who get done. Excuse my language, right?
We'll fix it later.
And then I realized what he means. And I really can see 2 types of people in this world when they approach any project. There are people who just overthink things so much. They want everything to be absolutely perfect. They don't realize that life is chaos, right? You can never get stuff done if you want it to be perfect. And there are others who just think of an idea, get the ground rolling, and learn as they go along. And I think that was my process. So, man, I took a Game of Thrones map. And I just drew over it because Game of Thrones was in the final season. Everyone was raving about Game of Thrones. And I'm like, that's the way I'll get people to play my game, is if I tell them there's a game about Game of Thrones, right? And the one that's sold in stores is so complex, no one wants to play it. And
I've played that one. It's pretty complex.
It is horrible.
Yeah.
Not horrible for a casual gamer, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I drew that and I made up some rules that mimic reality, right? That I wanted in the game. People came over, played it, had a blast. But then I sat down with each one and took their honest opinion on what they liked and what they didn't like. And I kept doing that and improving the game until I had a beautiful game that was playing really well. And that's when I picked my theme. That's when I said I want to play in the 3rd century BC. That's when I picked the characters, the heroes, and did everything you see today. Put in the map, built some algorithms and probability models to make sure that the game works well.
Yeah, I remember this. Algorithms. How will it make me win only? Type. There we go. It's like oh my god. Seriously. That was but what I had a question for you. Have you ever lost at your own board game?
Yeah, I have.
How many times?
I mean, I'd probably
Too many to
lose,
count.
Too many to count. I'd lose 50% of the time. And the
50%?
Yeah. I would
But
lose
with
50%.
us, 100%. You're winning.
Well, if we play again, you might be able to win. But my wife always gives me this advice. She's like, stop winning because no one's going to buy the game. Just let them win. I'm like, I can't. I'm just too competitive. The reason I don't win always is there is an element of luck, which mimics reality, right? There's a beautiful book I read about how the greatest battles in the world were shaped by sometimes luck. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but Napoleon at Waterloo, he had a stomach infection that prevented him from being his energetic self, which could have changed the entire world. And stuff happens. That's just
I
life.
completely agree. I've done some research on some battles, and I'm trying to think of one now, but it was William the Conqueror.
Yes. Yes.
He waited for 2 months to invade England.
Yes.
Because of the wind was going the opposite way. So he was at Normandy, and he wanted to sail towards England, but the wind was the other way.
Yeah.
So he had to wait for 2 months, which gave enough time for who is that? The Earl. I forgot his name now. Oh my God, I forgot his name. Who ended up he gathered his army,
Yeah.
and he came down to I think it's called the Battle of Hastings.
Yes.
And that battle. This is insane. That battle is what shaped English. I need to oversimplify. There's a YouTube channel, and they did this, and that's where I learned this from. It's amazing how he explains it, and I didn't know that such one battle, and because of an element of luck,
Exactly.
which was the wind, shaped how our language is spoken today. It's
Absolutely.
insane. You guys should watch that. But you just made me remember that.
Absolutely. And so the game tried to mimics this through random events, some dice, not a lot. But in addition to that, you got 6 players playing. I don't know if anyone can see the map here, but there's a massive map. And even if you're playing as 4 players, 3 people can gang up on you. And they often do when I'm playing. Every time I play this game, it's no longer fun for me.
Because you're always winning, that's why.
Everyone tries to attack me. No one trusts anything I say. And I'm always fighting everyone on the map, so I end up losing quite often now.
Well, hey, if you lose because people are ganging up, I think that's more than fair. I mean, that's more than fine, more than fair. You did your duty.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanna ask you a question a bit about the show.
Yeah.
What do you think the name Nobody's Famous means to you?
I see, and I don't know if you have this in mind, I see an element of humbleness, right, to it. As in, you have some distinguished guests, you have some up-and-coming artists, and when we say nobody's famous, to me, in my point of view, and this might be completely wrong, it's about saying that we're all one, we're all human, no matter what our accomplishments are, no matter what our backgrounds are. No one's really famous. We're all the same. We're all just as capable. We're all equal. And let's have a honest, friendly chat with nothing of that fame element, right? Like when I'm talking to a newspaper, I speak to it very differently than I would on this podcast, because there are certain, I would say, rasmiyat or protocol.
Yeah. Formalities.
And here it's more chilled. It's more relaxed. That's what I get out of it when I see the name of the show is, you're interviewing these amazing people, but they seem so relatable, and they feel so comfortable during the interview, and I really look forward to listening to more people. I can't say I listen to every single episode.
How dare you? I've played the game. Yeah. No, I'm joking.
But I definitely listened to a couple, and they were really fascinating people doing some amazing stuff that are truly inspirational.
I like what you said, just as capable.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you said about how you were able to do your own great things through just getting stuff done, starting things and just going ahead with them. And it's kind of like how our show kind of started. I was stuck in this very analysis paralysis kind of state.
Yeah.
And Alex was the one who kind of pushed me to, he's like, let's just record the show, and he called my bluff. He got the equipment, and he's like, just book a guest now. So I was like, oh my God, I have to ask people now to be on this show that no one has ever heard about. What are we going to talk about? I don't even know. So that's how it started. And that's why we relate to it quite a bit. And it's a great message for anyone who has this idea in their head, willing to start something. Because an idea in your head is just there. It's just that. And as soon as you write it down, that's the first step, but you need to do something about it.
Absolutely, man.
So I really we really relate to that point, just as capable.
Yeah.
What's the next step for Mohammad Qadi?
As a board game designer?
As anything, as there's many things to you. So there's
Yeah.
what's the next step for you? This is what you've created, you'll move on to something else? Are you
I mean,
what's the next step?
so I've set up a company called Cat Eye and Arts because as I was doing this, and by the way, this game has an educational component that you never really pick up on, but it's teaching you about Rome and Carthage and all these heroes and background and what happened in history.
Just like video games.
Just like video games, right? But so everything I wanted to do, I want to do that positively impacts this world, that enhances education, knowledge, interests in particular things that I think will be beneficial to people. Because history, for example, here, he who does not know his history is often, will often repeat it, right? History repeats itself. And for me, looking at that, I came up with Cat Eye and Arts, which is a positively charged atom. How can art positively impact our world? That's what Cat Eye and Arts mean. And right now I'm working on my second game called Climate Change. And it's there to teach kids about what climate change means, how to address it, what are the issues about it, in a fun, interactive way. I'm doing one on a Mars 2071 mission for the UAE. How does the UAE reach Mars? And what every kind of player has to do. There's an astronaut, there's a scientist there. We've talked about doing a collaboration together that I would love to work on as well.
Sneak peek.
So, I feel like this game, I mean, even if it's not the biggest thing going on in my life, and definitely my full-time job usually is, but I feel like I would pay an arm and a leg to continue doing this, even if it's not commercially successful, which it is, alhamdulillah, but even if it wasn't in the future, because it just feels like it's an outlet of creativity, and it's a way where someone can breathe. Someone who's quite stressed with so many responsibilities can just take a backseat and focus on something and just, kind of like painting. I don't know if you know this, but painting and coloring is often described as a self-treatment, right? Yeah. And to me, this is my way to escape some of the tension and the pressure that you might feel and that everyone feels, right? If every listener has their own thing. I'm not special. I'm not unique in that. Everyone has their family situation or their work situation or something that's keeping them busy. And I believe you need to find your thing that can take your mind off of it and just give your mind a break.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And with that, we've kind of reached the end of the show. Yeah. I have one final question for you. Do you have any questions for me?
Of course I do. And my question is, when are you designing your own board game? Because hey, let me just say something.
Drink some water.
So if anyone's listening on this podcast, when I first met Ali and I showed him my game, I realized he was working on his own. That and he showed me a story that he's written, a script that I absolutely fell in love with. It was such a beautiful story, and I really think you should take it forward. I know you're busy with the podcast and everything else you do.
Yeah, this is fine.
But man, I'm here to help. I'm here to collaborate. I'm sure others are too. But I think going on this theme of the show, just do it, man. Just.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right. I think we discussed it, and my answer to you was, you said when you were done with this, we're gonna work on that. So let this be the moment that we do that.
Sure.
That would be my answer.
Sounds amazing. I just wanted to, by the way, just thank you for having me on the show. It's a great honor and privilege to be here. I hope listeners perhaps like this board game, get a copy. I got to do my sell.
Look,
do you want to do that voiceover that you just did?
Oh yeah, I should do that. I should do that. So
let's give it a try.
So I'm doing an audition for the board game. Conqueror, Final Conquest. There's Asia Minor. And also Asia Major. Learn about Hannibal the Great, Julius Caesar, and I forgot his name. And Ramses II. Live in Conqueror Final Conquest, a grand campaign for 5 to 6 players, which will take you only 2 hours.
Wait, you got to put the link to sell it.
Oh,
right?
The link. I don't even know the link. It's a Cat Eye on Arts, right?
No, it's Conqueror FC.
A Conqueror FC.
So at conquerorfc.com, you can get your copy. If you don't want to put your credit card online, just go to Back to Games and you can get a copy from there. be sold in Virgin Megastores as well. Thank you so much again for having me. I really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Mohammed. It was an absolute pleasure. Any final words?
No, man, just again, humbled. And I hope this was inspirational for people who have creative projects to just move ahead and do it.
I'm sure it was. We'll sign us off. Thank you so much for being with us. This is the Nobody's Famous podcast. Signing off. You can find us on Anghami, SoundCloud, Stitcher. You can watch us on YouTube. Don't watch us while driving. You can listen to us, and we'll be with you all the way. Opa!